And now, it's time for the voice of mixed martial arts.
We are live!
It's Bruce Buffer. Bruce Buffer. It's time.
From the shores of Malibu where the waves are pumping to the Great Wall of China where no one is jumping, we are live from the UFC Fan Expo. This is the moment we've all been waiting for all year long, the biggest week of the UFC. And where are we? We are live in Las Vegas. I'm here with my co-host, my producer, TJ DeSantis. TJ, wow.
Yeah, pipes are sounding good today, Buff.
Oh, they better sound good because they got to sound better tomorrow.
Man.
Yeah.
International Fight Week, you talk about it. It's the biggest week in UFC each year. And, you know, we say this time and time again. I hate to sound like a broken record, but continuously we talk about these events getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think this event, UFC 290, would be the, hardest event to make feel like a big deal because so many eyeballs are on it. But 2 title fights coming up.
Yep.
Phenomenal card top to bottom. You had the Hall of Fame ceremony last night. You got UFC X today and tomorrow. Like, congratulations to the big wigs that are putting this stuff together, Bruce, because they still managed to surpass even my expectations, even lofty ones, because year after year they keep delivering.
You know what? They keep delivering really big, and of course Dana White's made the addition of his Power Slap show, which is happening tonight, right?
Yeah, tonight.
Yeah, tonight.
Rumble.
So if you're a UFC fan, if you're a Power Slap fan, if you're a Dana White fan, if you're any kind of a fan of everything we do in this sport, this is the place to be. I mean, when you think about it, look at this. It's rabid fans everywhere.
Right.
This is such a dedicated audience. I mean, the UFC store, did you see all the merchandise they have there?
So much stuff available.
Unbelievable. I mean, I was going through it, and I thought I could easily spend a couple $1,000 right now.
Absolutely. And, there's that old saying, like, have Christmas in July. Well, there's plenty of things to shop for if you want to, find your loved ones a gift. This is one thing I love doing. If people don't know, we do It's Time Radio. That's been a podcast that's going back to like 2008. At this point.
Like 16, 17
years?
Yeah,
I mean, long before Joe Rogan had a podcast, Bruce Buffer had a podcast.
That's right.
There.
Joe Rogan's walking to the bank saying, I started after Bruce Buffer, so it's okay.
It's all right. But I will say, normally we're in our own studios away from everyone. It is fun to be in front of the people and to witness and be a part of this community. We were talking earlier, like there's so much energy around a typical UFC event. But, with International Fight Week, to be in the midst of this, doing this show, Bruce, it's a very unique experience.
It's very unique, and it reminds me actually when we used to do the show in the studio together, how much fun it was.
Oh, man, I miss those days. We had Jean-Claude Van Damme in studio.
I know, Jean-Claude Van Damme. We had so many incredible people. It was awesome.
Maybe we'll build another studio. Maybe we'll get Crowley to build us a studio in Southern California.
Hey, Crowley, you hear that? Well, you better.
Need a studio.
Just make sure it's within 10 minutes of my house, please.
Of course, right. I think I might have to move 10 minutes within your house.
Well, the reason I say that is that the studio we used to have was about a 20-minute drive.
Right.
But they put up those cameras on the red lights. And
yeah.
I got a ticket going to the studio and back in one day. 2 tickets.
2 tickets in one day?
From the cameras, yeah.
Did you actually break the law?
I
that's the question.
10, 15 pounds over the speed limit, 10, 15 miles over the speed limit.
It's weigh-in day for the UFC. You got weight on your mind.
Yeah, I always love when you see those camera shots and they come in the mail and you're like, ooh.
I haven't gotten one yet.
Don't.
All right, I'll try not to. I got plenty of parking tickets. That reminds me, I think I need to pay one, actually.
Yeah, you better pay them.
Yeah.
They'll put a boot on that thing.
Yeah. I think we might be joined by some special celebrity guests here. I don't want to say names yet. I'll say one. Glover Teixeira might be joining us. So
Very
hopefully
cool. How about
chat with Glover.
Reed?
Oh, there's Reed Harris. Man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah.
Man behind the WEC. Still doing big things. Reed's been an unsung hero is Reed Harris to the UFC.
When you think about all the employees in the UFC, the people that work with the UFC, but if you look at the pedigree of Reed Harris, everything he's brought to the table, never wanting to step out in front of the camera and really take credit for anything, just making sure that everything runs smooth and runs great. I love Reed. I mean, he's always got my back. Always got my back.
And you're not going to find an athlete that will say anything bad about Reed Harris because Reed's the hookup to all the athletes, and he takes good care of them. And, one thing I think that doesn't get talked a lot about with Reed is, obviously people know that WEC, Zuffa purchased it, but the early days of the WEC, they were an independent company, operating the Tachi Palace Hotel and Casino out there in Lemoore, California. Back when being a mixed martial arts promoter, you might have been passionate about it, but nobody cared because no one knew what the sport was back then.
Well, I finally did announce a WEC.
Did you really?
Yeah. So it was right before they stopped it.
Okay.
And I remember getting into the cage. I was thinking, Don't say UFC.
Oh, I remember this. This was that pay-per-view.
Yeah, and people were actually taking bets that I was going to say WEC accidentally.
Oh, yeah, no. You wouldn't have said UFC accidentally. I know you're a pro, man.
No, I'm a pro. I mean, there's some names that get me like that. It's like Barbarina, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I make the O super big on the end, the A super big on the end, so I don't get out there and say like Travolta, Barbarino.
Right,
You know?
yeah. You know what? One thing that I love is, some of the old events, you can see your personal evolution in your announcing style. And, man, UFC Puerto Rico back in the day, I mean, you're a lot different than you are now. But also, too, like UFC 100, I think you were significantly different in your style thing compared to, say, UFC 200. And now UFC 300 is just around the corner.
You know what? What did I do? The 360 at UFC 100. People want me to do a 720 at UFC.
They want you to
300.
be a snowboarder at this point, Buffer. Like,
That's
come
okay.
on now.
That's all right. One and done. I can still jump and turn and do all that stuff, but let's stay healthy.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too. It would lose its shine if you made something like that a gimmick. You know what I mean?
Joe Rogan actually, when we discussed it, because he was the one that egged me on to do it along with the fans on the internet, and after I did it, he said one and done.
Right.
And I said that too. One and done.
I mean, we don't need you to actually die in the octagon. I know it's your dream to go out doing something that you love, but please don't hurt yourself in the octagon.
I don't want to die. I don't want to hurt, but I get hurt.
I mean, I firmly believe that you haven't told everyone yet that you are already in like some sort of licensing agreement with a hologram to be the UFC octagon announcer forever.
Not going to say a word.
That means yes.
Not going to say a word.
Research and development has begun, but man, I think the energy tomorrow night inside T-Mobile is going to be at an all-time fever pitch. 2 titles on the line. The Mexican fans are going to be here in droves. Do you get excited? Do you have a hard time like making sure you don't overexert yourself during weekends like this to make sure you have the energy? Because it's a long day, Bruce. I don't think people realize the endurance that is a UFC fight day.
Listen, the show is not about me. The show must go on. It's about the fighters and it's about the fans.
Right.
I always say that. But in preparation for it, I'm kind of a nun the night before a show. I don't go out. I used to go out and party and do whatever and have a great time.
I mean, there's a whole story about China White back in there. I saw it on Showtime.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Actually, that was after the show.
I know, but still.
That was after the show, but it was interesting. That was a very interesting documentary. That was a very interesting night for sure. So, with that being said, I always want to be fresh. I get a good night's sleep. People say, what do I do? No matter what I do Friday night, whether I go out to dinner with friends or whether I do, cough it up, party it up a little bit, I make sure I get like my 8-10 hours sleep, okay? I want to be ready to go. I do a little bit of training in the morning, meditation, power breakfast.
What's in the power breakfast?
Power breakfast for me can be a variety of things, but one example would be what I plan on tomorrow. Would be like oatmeal, raisins, bananas, blueberries, lots of blueberries, or a yogurt granola with
like a parfait.
Yeah, like a parfait with all that. Egg white omelet, some nice whole wheat or multigrain toast. Carb up. I want to carb up.
I like that. I mean, you have to, because it's like you can't really eat a meal once you're in T-Mobile, right? Like you have little snacks.
Well, they got that's one thing. People know this, I'm sure, but the UFC takes care of everybody. You go there, they've got the whole catering room. Every show, every city's different. Some of the food is great, some of the food is not so great.
Right.
But at T-Mobile, they put out a nice selection of food, and you can grab a nice bite before the show. And again, what I'll do is I'll go in there, even after the power breakfast, and I'll carb up. I'll have a little pasta.
Right.
And I'm not a dessert eater, but if they got key lime pie or
there you go,
some kind of apple pie with a bunch of carbs in it, I'm going to have a piece. And then it's just water for the rest of the evening.
I mean, serious question. I don't mean to point.
And I'll bring a banana to my table at the show. I'll have a banana in the middle of the show.
When I do events, I'm always afraid that I'm not going to have an opportunity to go to the bathroom. You know what I mean? So, I want to keep the whistle wet, if you will. So I'm drinking water. But do you have a lot of time to go to the bathroom? Are you able to get? Is there like this private Bruce Buffer bathroom?
Oh yeah, right. I wish. Well, put it this way. Sometimes I wind up in the fan bathroom, and that's dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
But no, there's usually right at the back. Every time I walk out, let's get real here. Every time I walk out to the arena, no matter what arena I'm in, I'll say to security, where's the bathroom?
Right.
Where's the nearest bathroom? And hopefully my dressing room is nearby. If not, I know exactly where it is. And I need that 3-4 minute period, which has to be very selective because you're not guaranteed it. They're rolling out fights like crazy.
Yeah.
So usually I'll get a chance to go maybe once or twice if I have to go.
You know
and I drink a lot of water during the show because I want to stay hydrated.
Right. one of my favorite announcements, and I didn't even know this was one of my favorite announcements until COVID hit. But when there
I can't believe we just talked about peeing in the show.
I mean, we got to. It's UFC X. It's all access.
Hey, we all do it.
It's true. I think they wrote a book. No, it's pooping. Everybody poops. I don't. Never mind.
That's a mom and dad book.
But you know, one of my favorite announcements that I didn't know I actually had nostalgia for, Bruce, was you telling the audience that it's 10 minutes before the next fight. So UFC fans, do what you gotta do.
Do what you gotta do.
And you know, once the fans were gone, like we didn't get that for the longest time. And I remember being in the building for the next UFC event that had fans. It was like, oh, this is back to normal.
Back to normal, exactly. You know, I'll never forget that first show we had in Jacksonville and some of the others we had. And
yeah, what was that? Did that feel like a movie set, empty arena like that? That had to feel weird looking out to an empty arena.
It was weird at first, but I got so used to it. I actually really enjoyed doing the Apex shows.
Right. It's a beautiful building.
It's a beautiful building, and it's just get into Vegas, do my work, go home. But I still got to get the fighters going and give them as much adrenaline and as much power punch that I can. So I just act like there's 5,000, 10,000 people there.
Right.
You know?
Just manufacture it yourself.
Just manufacture, try to create the atmosphere, and it's on TV, and hopefully it comes across that way.
Yeah, and that's one thing I know you love working in front of a live audience, because you can feel their energy and you give it back. And there are certain stadiums throughout this world where I can tell through the television or if I'm in the building that you're giving them a little bit more because they're giving you more.
You know, I feed off the energy, and maybe they feed off me too, but the more energy they give, the more I'll give. I'll always give my energy. I'll give every last ounce of energy I have, to the point where even though I'm only announcing, the show will be over, and I'll get back to my room, and I just kind of like want to fall back and just go, oh.
I mean, you have to be tired, you know, it's a lot.
I'm jacked up with adrenaline.
Sure.
You know, I want to go out and have a nice dinner or do something, you know, hang out with John Anik or, you know, whoever friends I have in town. But, you know, it's like Boy Scouts go to camp when we do shows. You know, we're going out with all our compadres. But, you know, it's I forgot where we were at with that, but the energy of the crowd. You know, when I walk out and the first fight hasn't even gone off yet, and if there's like a few thousand, or in some cases half the stadium or more is full, and they go nuts, you know, go crazy when I walk out. I like to walk in the octagon and bow to them and acknowledge the crowd and just like, hey, let's just look forward to a really great evening. Let's have a lot of fun here. It's time to party.
You know, I'm looking at what they're doing here all weekend with the Hall of Fame ceremony and obviously the Expo today and the upcoming fights. You know, it's fun to remember generations, and you've been there for essentially all of them. I mean, who's been in the UFC longer than Bruce Buffer at this point? Nobody.
Nobody. I think I'm the longest one.
Yeah, I mean, it's you and then like Andrei Arlovsky at this point. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm longer than Andrei, but Andrei's longer in the tooth than most anybody.
Yeah, no, UFC 28, I think, was his
it's amazing
debut. So, yeah, and that's the thing, too. People don't realize that you invested in combat sports a long time ago. You owned websites that covered the sport.
Well, I mean, I was working in boxing with my legendary brother, Michael Buffer, and I announced boxing before I ever even announced UFC. And actually, my first fight was a kickboxing fight many, many years ago. But yeah, you know, when the sport started and the internet started, and really when the sport started, the internet was just basically starting.
Yeah.
Back then, and there was maybe, aside from UFC.com, there wasn't really that many sites covering.
No.
Marshall Sherdog.
Right.
And we started Max Fighting.
Yeah.
You know, and Max Fighting, a lot of people came out of Max Fighting and went on. Tom Gerbasi went on to work for the UFC.
I mean, he's been at the UFC for almost 20 years now, Gerbasi.
Yeah, he was there. Josh Gross went on to do his thing and wound up, you know, having battles with Dana White. And then now he does his thing elsewhere or whatever. Hey, Josh, just playing around with you. But, you know, all these journalists, you know, came out of it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's the thing, too. As big as this sport gets, I still think that it's a small community that makes the world go round.
Well, it's a small community when you think about the fact we were taken off the air back in the late 90s. Yeah. When when it came down, we were taken off in demand, and we were only left on DirecTV.
And that was when people didn't have satellite television.
No, we had 65 million potential people to watch and buy the UFC. We're down to 16 million on in demand.
Yeah.
I mean, the UFC was the fastest growing pay-per-view, top 10 pay-per-view when it first started.
Right.
You know. And
Did you know it would get to this level then? Because, I mean, there were some bleak years.
I believed from day one.
Yeah.
It was going to be the biggest thing in fighting sports. That's why I invested in it. That's why I got my brother Michael to announce it in the beginning. That's why I worked my way into it the way I did, which took me a year and a half to get to become the Octagon announcer.
And you never wavered from that, even in the dying days of SEG? You still believe that there were the brightest days were yet to come?
I was worried that we were going to go under, and it was when SEG, we did one event in a city in Louisiana. I think Lake Charles. I forget where it was. But there was maybe 1,500 people in the audience, and that was when Kevin Randleman slipped and almost knocked himself out.
Oh, the pipe in the back,
The pipe in the back, and they came into the IFB in my ear, and they said, hey, there's no main event. Tell the audience there's no main event. Kevin Randleman knocked himself out.
Go home, bye.
You know what?
What were you supposed to do?
It was can and bottle time. I mean, people were really upset. That was the lowest point ever I'd seen at the UFC, and I remember that show or a previous show, I met Dana White introduced me to Lorenzo Fertitta. And then when I got the call from Dana, or from Robert Meyer, was the owner, that Dana bought the show with the Fertittas.
Right.
That was a turning point. I thought, okay, we're going to get back up there again.
And that's the thing that I love about mixed martial arts is I'm obviously passionate about this sport like you are, but from a business standpoint, the UFC being sold from the Fertittas to Endeavor for billions of dollars when it was bought for millions of dollars, it was pretty cool to see the world be forced to recognize that not only is this a legitimate mainstream sport, but it's a sport that does legitimate mainstream business at the billion-dollar level.
Well, yeah, because when they first bought it, they paid $2 million for it. It's no secret.
Which was a risky deal at the time, to be honest. What you were buying wasn't much.
Very risky deal. They had to put a lot of money into it. They had the deep pockets to do so. And when it sold for $4.2 billion, had you owned one share of stock back then, which, being the businessman that I am and was, I thought, why the heck did I not try to buy one share? Because it was worth $42 million.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And there's still brighter days coming. Like, the UFC continues to raise the bar. And did you hear the news? George St. Pierre coming out of retirement to do grappling.
I think it's great.
UFC Fight Pass Invitational. Like, I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I love grappling. I've called some events that you've been a part of with Eddie Bravo.
Yeah.
And GSP lending his name to active competition, that's going to change that sport.
It's going to change the sport, and other top fighters have gone in, but this is GSP.
Yeah.
And we've always thought, oh, is he going to come back in the octagon? Is he going to come back whatever? But he's coming back in a grappling way, and, safer for him, healthier for him. And maybe if he gets the itch, maybe he'll get back in the octagon. Who knows?
Maybe. I'm just curious who it's going to be. I had a chance to speak with George yesterday, and he's such a class act. And he's doing it for the right reasons. He's very calculated with it. I mean, when he came back to middleweight to fight Michael Bisping, he wanted to do certain things in the training room to make sure that he could be fight ready. He's got that same mindset for this FPI participation. But I threw a name out there, and he definitely didn't shoot it down, but also kept his options open. I would love to see the freshly inducted Anderson Silva get on the mat with GSP.
Well, that's one of the fights that all of us wanted to see our entire careers.
Right, and if it happens in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu rule set, I still think that delivers, that scratches that itch to a certain extent.
I agree. Listen, anything can happen.
I mean, people are talking about maybe Khabib,
Well, I heard Khabib is coming back.
That would be news to me.
I thought I read where he was going to do grappling.
I mean, maybe.
You know what? There's always rumors out there. It's a rumor mill. Everybody talks.
I hope you're right.
Speaking of legends, there's Don Fry down there.
I know. He's got a new show on Fight Pass called Tea and Whiskey with Caroline Pierce. Don is one of the best. One of the best personalities.
Well, my first UFC in UFC 10, was it? Yeah, it was the premiere of Don Fry.
Wow. That was that tournament that Mark Coleman won.
Dothan, Alabama.
Yeah, Dothan, Alabama.
Yep.
Man, when's the last time you were in Dothan, Alabama?
UFC 10.
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, I love seeing, again, personalities from yesteryear. Don Fry, one of those phenomenal individuals that, is still around the sport. And that's what's exciting to see all those, familiar faces.
You talk about when the sport went from spectacle to sport. There's an example of what it was like back then. Don Fry was one of the more polished, strikers coming in. And never forget with his red, white, and blue Speedo and, looking like Mr. America at the same time.
He was one of the first examples of a real mixed martial artist, too, mixing multiple facets.
Yeah, for sure. It was just very exciting to watch him win. And we've always gotten along. Don's just a great guy. I'm looking around this place, and I'm seeing legends everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's awesome. I mean, here I am. I've been in this thing over 27 years, and I'm like a fan right now just looking around. This is so awesome.
I mean, 30 years, and you've been around for 27 of them. Unbelievable.
Well, you know what? Maybe at 30, I'll get the gold watch. Who knows? Dana, Rolex, please. Rolex.
I mean,
Rolex.
it's got to be a Rolex,
Gotta
right?
be.
There you go. Bruce Buffer doing work here at UFC X. It's Time Radio. Want to tell everyone to check out all the archives of our shows available on UFC Fight Pass. You can also check out the show on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts. Just do a search for It's Time. This is a question you probably get a lot, but is there one individual moment over your 27 years in the Octagon that sticks out where if it was the movie and it was encompassing your life, what is the ending scene where it's like, I was a part of this?
It's one of the most, TJ, honestly, I wish I had an answer to that because it's one of the most difficult questions for me to answer because I've had so many incredible experiences that the moment I think I've experienced the most amazing experience, I experienced another amazing experience. I can't name one. I can name memorable ones.
Right.
Let's face it, the Forrest Griffin-Stephen Bonner fight, the finale to the Ultimate Fighter Season 1 series, that was tantamoutly just one of the biggest moments in UFC history. UFC 100, the fact that we hit 100 pay-per-view shows.
Century mark.
Even forgetting I did the 360 in front of Brock Lesnar at the egging on of the fans and Joe Rogan. Just that whole night, was amazing.
Yeah, no, phenomenal. One thing that sticks out to me is opening up Madison Square Garden, being in the world famous.
There's another
arena.
example. The fact that I walked out of Madison Square Garden, the mecca of fighting, that was like tantamount. And then you think, okay, what's another one? Open up the O2 Arena in London, right?
How about Paris last year?
Paris was another very, very memorable event. And I go on and on. When we go into other countries, whether it's like Sydney, Australia, and we experience the different cultures and when you think about all it took to get the UFC to where it is here in the United States, they still fight that same battle in other countries. Right. So when we finally go in there, whether it's Germany, other ones we're going to go to, I can't wait till we go to Italy, whether it be Elon Musk and Zuckerberg.
You think it's going to happen? Could you imagine doing that introduction?
All right, well, let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
Everything I'm seeing and hearing and people I've talked to, I would say there's definitely a really solid chance this is going to take place.
Wow. I mean, you would know better than me. You have conversations with
I'm not on the inside, okay? I don't know everything.
But you get that feeling.
Yeah.
It's not just something they talk about on the internet. Not just fluff, if you will.
Hey, Steve.
All right.
How are you, buddy? It's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a long time.
Speaking of shows that you can watch on UFC Fight Pass, the 3 knockdown rule covers the sport of boxing. You can watch it on UFC Fight Pass. It features Mario Lopez, you know him, and a man that I have never met, but I used to produce his podcast, so I'll give you that. Steve Kim, kind enough to join us. Steve, how are you?
This brings back memories. I don't know if you know this, but in like 2004, he was my radio producer.
That's right.
And so here's the funniest thing. So we created something called the SK Radio Network, because there's no such thing. It was just my initials. And the most memorable interview we did, I don't know if you remember this, but I asked Bob Aaron, Bob, you promised a great undercard. I don't think you delivered. What do you have to say to that? And he goes, goodbye, Steve. And he just hung up on the interview. I don't know.
That's right. That's true.
And that's the difference, though. Boxing for years neglected their undercards. And I think that Dana White actually kind of learned that this can't just be about the main event. The one thing I've always said, look, I'm more of a boxing guy. Top to bottom, what I've noticed about UFC is that they have much deeper undercards. And I'll never forget, a good friend of mine, we both know him, Mark Ratner. When he turned over to UFC. So you know the one thing I noticed about this UFC thing, Steve, I'm young at this. We were at a show in Toronto, is that opening bell, 80% of the audience was in their seat.
Right.
You go to a boxing match, it's the funniest thing. You want to see a swath of empty seats, go to a pay-per-view event at about 7 o'clock. You've been there, Bruce.
I've been there left and right for 30 years, and plus in and out of boxing. You're absolutely correct. And, fight of the nights in UFC are sometimes the first and second prelim.
Yeah, it is a different culture. The UFC really is about the card. And, look, I think boxing's having an excellent year.
Sure.
DJ, I actually cannot complain about the matchups being made at top. The problem is, and it's inevitable that the better the main event, the worse the undercard, because all the money's going to 98% of the fighters on the marquee. So
the metrics are a little bit different in boxing and MMA, and that's one thing though I do feel like from a fan standpoint, we're starting to see the boxing products, especially with Tom Loeffler's show on Fight Pass, we're starting to see these boxing cards built in a way where MMA fans like myself can get invested in these up-and-coming athletes in a way where, I mean, it's familiar to me in MMA, but in boxing, I don't feel like guys that are 3-0, 4-0 have really been showcased at a high level with all the pomp and circumstance of a great production.
Tom Loeffler is an old friend of ours. I've known him for years. The job he did with Gennady Golovkin in getting a world-class fighter somewhere in the middle of his career, but having a grassroots approach. And it wasn't always about the money.
Right.
They would actually take less money to get better guys in there. And instead of just going to casino venues, TJ, they went to LA. They rented out the Garden. They went to places where they said, we're going to build something. And I know one thing about Tom. He is a worker. He's very conscientious. I went to your last show last month at the Commerce Casino. I would have said hi. He was busy, though, with Doug Fisher. And
That's right, yeah.
And I just love the fact he's taking a guy like Callum Walsh. But you got to have, here's the thing, though, guys, and this is where boxing needs to have a culture change. You have to have the boxers understand the overall plan. It's not always about the money in your 6th pro fight. I see too many times where young boxers say, well, if you're not going to pay me what I want, I'm simply not going to fight. At the sacrifice of activity. Now, I believe Callum Walsh is coming back relatively soon, correct?
There's talks about him
He's fighting at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, that's in November. I heard that he might have a fight in August. So that's trying to figure that out.
Sergey Bohachuk, I know you're doing a show in a couple of weeks. He's a really exciting fighter from the Ukraine, I believe. So Tom Loeffler is one of those guys. He believes in the old school way of promoting, which is grassroots, promote it, build locally, and then you actually branch out.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing that really makes me happy here, and don't take this wrong, Steve. Back in the early days of the UFC, many boxing people, fine journalists like Steve, were not into UFC.
Yeah. Right.
I didn't even know what it was.
And we've had conversations about that. And Jim Lampley, probably one of the major hardheads that won't, break down about it. With all respect to Jim, he's great at what he does, and he's a friend. But it's just so nice to see you sit here and acknowledge the beauty of MMA, as well as the beauty of boxing, which I'm a huge fan. I love boxing. I always have. My grandfather's, was champion of the world back in 1920, 21, Johnny Buff and all. And I've been watching boxing forever, but I love the fact that people appreciate the apples and oranges that the two sports are.
Well, let me just say this. I was one of the first writers to actually tell boxing, and I wrote articles at Max Boxing. I don't even think it goes up on the archive anymore. Guys, you better take this seriously. And I think the UFC and MMA was needed overall for one thing. There had to be a counterbalance towards boxing.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing about having a business that's the only one in town, you get complacent.
Right.
And if there is no true competition for the entertainment value of the dollar, the promoters, I don't want to say they're predatory, but they will take advantage of it. And the one thing I do like about boxing this year is that it's actually stepped up its game, and it has to realize that you're right, Bruce. I think there was a time about 15 years ago, boxing had an arrogant attitude that we are the only game in town as it relates to combat sports in America. Right. If the powers that be in that sport could not recognize the growing appeal and the influence of it, because think about this, guys. Look at the young generation. There have been studies. Boxing skews very old.
Right.
MMA skews a lot younger. Look, we all went to a high school that had a wrestling team.
Right, absolutely.
Every high school,
Every wrestling team exists about every high school. They haven't had boxing teams in about 50 years in America. So if you actually look at the natural fan base and the participants that are being created in America, the demographics actually skew in one direction.
It is, and listen, the UFC has the hearts and minds of the 18 to 34-year-olds, if not the earlier and the wider. And one thing as much as I'm not too excited about, these influencer boxing events that happen. But I mean, Logan Paul's a buddy of mine. I admire what he does. Jake Paul walks to his own tune, the whole bit. But at least they're bringing young eyeballs into boxing. Hopefully those young eyeballs will watch Canelo and watch, the other great boxers that are out there, and Joshua when they go at it.
Bruce, I don't know how long that fad is going to last. I don't know if we're at the 15th minute of that.
It's already lightening up, Steve,
but however,
yeah.
The fact that it was allowed to exist had a lot to do with the fact that boxing overall may have not been giving the fan base what they wanted a couple of years ago.
Absolutely agree.
So I just find it really interesting that, like, you look at a convention like this. It's the first time here. I'm walking with my our executive producer, Ignacio Bernal, and this is like a real thing.
Right.
You couldn't do this in boxing, and I'll tell you why. because you could not get Top Rank, Matchroom, The Zone, Showtime,
Right.
the WBC. It's certainly fractured to a point that to get Top Rank to do anything with Golden Boy of this nature for the fans, it just can't happen.
But
Right.
what you just mentioned is one of the key reasons that boxing so much was shooting itself in the foot in years and years ago, because in the UFC, the best fight the best, right? Promoters don't work together all the time in boxing. You know, once in a while they do, but not all the time.
Here's the thing. I don't want to complain about Crawford Spence. I think it's an excellent fight. The one fight I'm looking forward to as much as anything. But this is the reality, and people aren't going to like that I say this. They're basically 35 and 33. If this was the UFC, they'd be on their, fourth fight?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that the track record suggests, look, one thing boxing has to do to build off of this year, which has been a very good one, they got to start getting these guys in a little bit sooner. And one of the issues that I think boxing really has is most of our elite guys do not fight enough anymore. Bruce, when we were talking with Gary Randall back at his old loft, our top 10 fighters, the blue chip guys that we like, would generally fight at the top end about 3 times a year.
Every 3 to 4 months.
TJ, I've actually charted this. They fight about 1 or 2 times a year now.
Wow.
So and I've asked this, how in the world can any sport grow if your version of Kobe Bryant or LeBron James is only out there 8 months?
Great analogy.
Yeah, and MMA guys, they want to fight at least 3 and if not 4 times a year.
You go back at the old days when Jake LaMotta would face the same opponent, or Sugar Ray Robinson, like twice in 3 months.
Well, here's what happened. So Ray Robinson's first loss, I think it was like a 79th, 80th fight. He loses to Jake LaMotta. Everyone always talks about how they had a rematch 3 weeks later. Ray Robinson actually had a tune-up fight in between the rematch. Now,
Crazy.
we're not asking for that because the game has changed. But I think one of the issues that boxing has that does bother me, the networks are promoters, whether it's Showtime or ESPN.
Right.
And once you sign a deal, an exclusive output deal with a network, it is very hard to actually make cross-promotions or co-promotions. And then all of these promoters have a budget within the network, which means you could be the most exciting fighter in the world, but if you're making a certain amount of money, you're already limited to 2 appearances. You're simply not going to get the third. I don't know how you really change that, guys, and that's one of the quandaries I think boxing has moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, another thing too, you know how they talk about the pay with fighters, and you know, one thing about, and with all respect, there's boxers out there, you've seen the paychecks, they're fighting undercards for like $1,500.
Can I say something? And I've written about it, so this is not pandering to anybody. A lot of boxers are overpaid. It's the God's honest truth. That's why a lot of pay-per-view fights actually don't make money.
Right.
People could say what they want and criticize what happens. All I know is this. The reason why boxers are overpaid is because promoters need to stack their rosters for the networks that they have a deal with. So in essence, you are not getting paid for the actual value, because they're not actually looking at, well, how many tickets do you draw? How many pay? Maybe with Canelo they do, right?
Yeah, with Canelo, sure.
But a lot of fighters are actually being paid for their exclusivity.
Right, yeah.
It's not actually the perceived or real value of a fight.
Right.
So
how do you feel? I'm sorry to interrupt you, Steve.
So my view is, you know, I think the genie is out of the bottle because, and I've spoken to people at different companies, and they'll tell you, Steve, if we don't give these exorbitant guarantees without knowing who the opponents are for the next 5 years of this fighter, someone else will sign them to that, and then we're out of luck.
But you know what, getting back to it, it's like, okay, here, a young fighter in the UFC, TJ, what is it now, 12 and 12?
12 and 12, I think, is the entry level. Yep.
An entry-level fighter, preliminary one, gets $12,000 to walk in that cage. Gets $12,000 more if they win. And has a chance to win a $50,000 fight bonus. Does boxing ever give out, and I'm not putting down, I love boxing, I'm just asking you, have you ever heard where, like, a great fight of the night that Bob Arum would hand a $50,000 check to that other
No,
fight?
you know what their thinking is, though? Bob would be like, we already are overpaying you. What in the hell? You know what I love in boxing? This is what I hate, TJ, when people say they should put up, like, there's always a fight negotiation, and they say, okay, why don't we put aside 10% for the winner? So the division of money between you two is 45%, 45%, 10% for the winner. It's great in theory, but I remember Eddie Hearn and Bob Arum both said, yeah, here's the problem with that extra 10%. It always comes off our end. So, so the fighters themselves always talk a good game, but look, when you are a fighter and you're getting 7 figures, and there's actually no real evidence that you are selling 10,000 tickets or you have at least 800,000 viewers on basic premium cable, my question would be, are you sure you're not overpaid?
Right.
No one wants to ask these questions, but there's an economic reality that exists in all businesses.
Well, I'll tell you who asked those questions. Steve Kim asked those questions, along with Mario Lopez. You can check it out, the 3 Knockdown Rules podcast available on UFC Fight Pass. Steve, appreciate you stopping by.
Great to see you again.
Nice meeting you finally after all these years.
Let me just say one thing. Steve Kim and I have known each other. I think he made it evident. We've known each other pretty much almost like
25 years.
25 years.
Wow.
Yeah, long time.
He hasn't aged a bit. I have, though. That's the difference.
Well, I'll take that. I'm 66 now, Steve. Thank you so much.
you.
Like even more now, Steve.
Oh, thank you. Thanks,
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. Thank you. Steve Kim, kind enough to give us a few moments here
Take care
as
of
we
yourself,
broadcast live from UFC X.
One of the finest journalists and one of the finest people in boxing right there.
I think it's going to be a rapid-fire pace here, as I can see the former UFC light heavyweight champion Glover Teixeira to my right, taking some photos with some fans. I think we're going to get a few moments with Glover. He was part of the UFC Fight Pass Invitational last week. And,
oh, really?
Yeah, he got a win over Anthony Lionheart-Smith in a grappling event, which was fun.
Wow. Here he is.
There he is right now, joining
Glover,
us.
how are you, buddy?
Have a seat.
Have a
Thank you,
seat.
sir. Here he is. Future Hall of Famer in my book, Glover Teixeira. Kind enough to give us a few moments on its time. Glover, how are you?
I'm good, yeah.
I appreciate you joining
How
us.
you guys doing?
We're good. We're good.
Good to see you, Glover.
Not looking good as this guy over here.
Oh, man, I'll take all that all I can get.
I'm starting to think that it's in everyone's contract. You have a contract with everyone to say nice things about your looks, Buffer.
You know, it's in the addendum. I made sure it was put in.
He looks good. What can I say? You
Absolutely.
know?
Real recognizes real, I think the kids
Glover,
say.
I'm 66 now.
Wow,
Just turned you out.
man. It's
Yep.
incredible.
All
It's
natural.
incredible.
All natural. Yeah.
Really, Bruce?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Man, really is the question I was asking last week about your travel schedule to get to the UFC Fight Pass Invitational, man. It was planes, trains, and automobiles to get to Vegas. You were like, what was because you were in Jacksonville the week before. Tell me the process, what it took to get you essentially from Jacksonville to Las Vegas last Thursday for the FBI.
Connector flight.
Yeah, so it was, you know, the New York was have some problem over there. The tri-state problem with the flights. I think was 1,800 flights canceled. So I couldn't make it, you know. But the whole organization, you know, the Fight Pass Invitational, give a great support, and Anthony Smith, and we were able to get here a day before the match and did the match. I'm so happy with that.
I mean, I was so happy. It was an honor to, call your fight, and, to have you retire earlier this year from mixed martial arts competition to come back and do jiu-jitsu. It looked like you were having fun out there. For all things considered with the traveling and, dealing with a tough guy like Anthony Smith, you looked right at home on that mat. Was it exciting for you to do that grappling and, compete, albeit away from mixed martial arts?
Yes, man. I love the rules. I love the way the match was. We walk in a platform. It was great. I really enjoy. Hope you guys get me there again, and I'm looking forward to it.
Did you like the rules set up? The 3 rounds and the judges. What were your thoughts of the concept there?
I love both of the rules. I love the dynamic of the.
Look at this superstar over here.
Jesus.
Real quick.
That's
He's
it.
the
No
best.
more. That's
He's
it.
the best,
You
man.
said one, man.
You know, he's like, look at that. He's taking care of the fans.
I'm just here blown away that Glover, the great fighter that he is now entering the world of grappling.
Yeah.
How long are we going to see you do this, Glover?
I don't know. Long as
Because the money's going to get better. You know that.
Okay.
Well,
Sounds
George
good.
St. Pierre's coming back. Did you hear about that?
Yes, I heard about that, and I was so excited to see GSP go over there and do his thing again. It's going to be amazing.
That's huge. But yeah, that's the thing too. I feel like there are, stars like Gordon Ryan. He's changed the sport of grappling tremendously. But gentlemen like yourself that are established UFC names, after your fighting career is over, there's still ways to be involved with the sport and to compete at a very high level. I think we're going to start to see more and more events like the FPI really put on these shows and make them feel like big UFC fight nights, but have it be Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes, and like we talk about the rules too. Like you see a guys like any of those guys, the high level jiu-jitsu like Gordon Ryan, Cyborg, and Wagner Rocha, although Nick. Nick Rod, they are very hard to get in a position to get finished. So with their rules, it's like they already starting your back, starting your arm bars.
Right, yeah.
It's like that. For the fans, I think, because I was like this, like, oh man, he's gonna get out of there, you know? Because you put yourself in a situation that I think is gonna be great for the fans to look and keep watching.
So let's take it a step further, Glover, knowing that the warrior that you are and forever will be. Would you ever do the combat jiu-jitsu where you can palm strike?
Hey, Bruce, if the money's right, man, I do anything.
Good answer,
you know?
Glover. I knew that was going to be the case, yeah.
Yeah, I do anything, man. Yeah. But it'd be fun to go over there and do it, because my jiu-jitsu, my whole life I trained for that. It's more like my setup, a guard pass, set up for submission. I set up with striking. So if I'm gonna guard pass, I strike, then I pass, and stuff like that. So I have a little bit difficult time to like adjust it, you know, with no striking.
Right. Well, you know what?
Hey, if the strike comes along,
why not?
Let's see.
If the strike comes along, strike it.
Yeah, let's do it.
I also want to give you credit too, because you're one of the. I'm a firm believer in the jab. Okay, I think the jab sets everything up. I think it sets up, obviously, the knockout punch, obviously the takedowns, double, triple jab, but not everybody in mixed martial arts practices the jab.
No.
You did, right? And let's say that was one of your biggest points in your arsenal, right? Wasn't that one of the more advantageous things you had, the jab?
Yes. My older age, when I got the boxing coach of Finale, he started telling me the jab.
Yeah.
So yes, I start jabbing more to coming in, because I'm a shorter guy. Most of the guys that I fight is taller, so I have to use a lot of jab.
Yeah. Open them up. And the beauty about the jab is you don't have to put a lot of power behind it, so you're not wearing a lot of energy out. You let your opponent walk into it.
Yes,
you know?
That's another thing. You keep jabbing, jab is for everything, you know. Like all the best strikers in the world, they have a great jab, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
And it can keep, like Chuck Liddell. Believe it or not, Chuck had a great jab, because he tried to keep you.
He had a great jab.
It was one and then the overhand.
Right.
One and then the overhand.
But he also had the great jab, which I trained a lot. Being able to punch going backwards.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Chuck is one of the few fighters that can hit you with all his power going backwards.
Yeah, he'd knock people out moving backwards.
That's right. And
like Muhammad Ali.
Exactly. And when I was personally training as heavy as I was in kickboxing in my younger years, we worked on that. And I was big on learning to do everything I could from my standard stance, both sides, left and right, training both sides, switch stance the whole bit.
Yeah, Chuck was, his timing too was like, it was
impeccable.
For me,
yeah.
After I trained with all the guys, you know, I think his timing is like, every time I get hit by him, it's like, wasn't he hits very hard like Alex Pereira hit harder, but he's just the timing. He hits you like when you step into to go for takedown or something. He's set up that timing so good. So that was his main thing, I think.
I think so too. Aside from the
overhand was like devastating.
I know. God, I think about some of those great wars Chuck Liddell had. But I think about the great wars you had, Glover. I mean, who have you not fought? You fought everybody.
Yeah, man, it was a good run, you know.
Yeah,
it was a good run. I love it. Yeah.
And I think the best story about your career, Glover, is capturing a UFC title when you did. A lot of people thought that the title window had closed for you in your career, but you still marched forward and you took it, and you were an inspiration for everybody.
Man, yes, it was inspiration, and it was like so much like appreciation that I have for all the people. Like I see everybody from the UFC that I see for a long time, like Bruce over here, and everybody, when I walk in the backstage after I won the title, I see the faces, and everybody was so emotional, and people crying in the back. It was one of the most touching experience I have in my life.
Yeah,
no doubt. It was about winning the title was a great thing, but just walking out there and see everybody was crazy.
I think it was a win for everybody that was involved that has come across you in your career, though, because like I did the watch along for that pay-per-view with Jens Pulver, and we just stopped talking. We were just amazed because that win meant so much to everyone who knew Glover.
I also want to give credit to listen, it's the loneliest sport in the world once that cage closes. It's just you, right? But your team leading up to the point that you walk into that cage is very, very important. And you had a very, very good friend of mine, I love him to death, in the great coach in John Hackelman. I mean, I got to give him so much credit for the people that he's worked with, his dedication. But one of the things I love about John is his love of his fighters and the care he has towards his fighters. He would be the first one to tell you that he doesn't want you to fight, right? Not take that next fight.
Doubt.
He cares about his fighters, aside from being an extremely tough man himself.
Yes, he's incredible tough. John, when he did the black belt for Chuck and Eric Shirt and Rick, so the 3 black belts, he have to spar them all. At the end of the day, he's like, what the hell? I'm the one that spar all of them. They're supposed to be in the middle, but he does that. He doesn't like anybody to spar hard.
Yes.
And he doesn't like when his fighters start getting beat too much.
You don't need to spar hard.
No,
you know?
Don't need it. I learned that from him.
Yeah, you know what it's like to take a punch. You know, that's one of the problems in boxing, where there's so much pugilist dimension, and I'm sorry to say we lose a number of boxers a year. It's not just from the event that they're going into, it's all the training they did up to that point.
No doubt, no doubt. In the gym, I see a lot of guys, to be honest, they go in and they train so hard and they get knocked down, knocked out in the gym, and then they go on a fight with weak jaw, you know.
Exactly.
It's a problem. That's a problem for
And
them.
every fighter, once they get knocked out, there's always that trepidation there that they can be knocked out again.
Yeah.
You know?
Your brain send that message, you know, like, okay, if I go out, it's okay. So eventually, you're gonna go out easier.
Basically, it's called "I'm not indestructible anymore."
Right.
Yeah.
And I think about, a guy like Robbie Lawler, who fights for the final time tomorrow inside the UFC. He's a guy who cut out sparring entirely for a good chunk of his career, and he actually said now that he's walking away from active competition, he can start to turn up his training a bit more. So his training partners, while he's no longer necessarily getting ready for UFC fights, he's going to be a little more ruthless, if you will, in the room, because he's not needing to protect himself so much as an active fighter. So.
Oh my goodness, I don't want to be a Robbie Lawler training partner, man. That guy hits hard and he comes to fight every time.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, but like you say, he doesn't spar though.
No. So.
He do a lot of drills. I watch him a couple of times because I train in ATT.
Right.
He do a lot of drills and a lot of hard work. But yeah, he doesn't spar much.
No.
I mean, I never see him spar, but I heard he doesn't spar at all.
Well, he doesn't spar, but when that bell rings, he certainly does go at
Absolutely.
it. So that's the key factor.
I mean, you got to be ruthless when your nickname's Ruthless, and Robbie is definitely that. And we're going to see him one final time.
You know, the other thing too is that fighters like you're so kind, you're so nice. I have to say, you're so sweet. You know, you're just a gentleman all the time. But when we don't use a bell. What do we use?
A air horn.
A air horn. Or when the ref says to go, your shark eyes go over, and you're just ready to rock. You know.
Yes, you got an octagon. You got to be ready. You got to be ready for that battle. You know, whatever it is. Hopefully, it'll be a quick night, so you get out of there quick. But like I say, you got to be ready for whatever comes at you. You know, and
that's why
you gotta have that mentality like it's no quitting over here.
You have the perfect fighter mentality because you're ready to go 365 days a year, and that's what a fighter is all about. You're a warrior with warrior spirit, and you'll have it till the day you leave this beautiful world. You know, you're never going to change, Glover. It's always there.
Thank you, man.
You're always there. I'm so proud of you.
That's one of the first things that John told me. It's like about the heart and determination. He said, you got everything that I can't cheat you. The things that I can't cheat you heart.
No.
And I can't cheat you that determination, they're willing to go.
You can
the
learn
rest
all
I'll do. The rest I can teach.
Exactly. You can have all the skills in the world, but without heart, you're halfway there.
Yes.
All right, well, we're going to let you go on your way here, Glover. A lot of things going on here at UFC X, and thank you so much for giving us a few moments.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Glover Teixeira, former UFC light heavyweight champ.
FBI again soon.
Yes,
end
sir.
of the year.
Let's go.
All right.
Hopefully we'll see him on the FBI map before too long.
Take care, my friend.
It's our time to get going ourselves. Thank you for coming over and doing some It's Time.
I just got to say that Dave Manley, the maker of the MMA bobbleheads, I'm so proud of this. This is the new bobblehead that came out.
Is this a gift for me?
If he will allow me to give it to you, I will.
Really?
I don't know. It's almost sold out, but it's so cool because
Oh, it's the white jacket.
It's the white jacket, but there's about 10 sayings that come out of this.
Oh, really?
You press the button and it's got all the...
Does it work? Can we try to do that real quick? Let's see.
I can't hear.
Do it again. Nice.
Here, wait, keep going.
Okay. That's amazing.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening.
All right, one more.
And now,
It's so cool, right?
I love it.
this is the moment.
Okay.
There
So
you
anyway,
go. Where do they
go
get
to,
it?
go to MMAbobblehead.com. They only made 1,000 of them. I think they're almost all sold out.
I love the white jacket. I love the white jacket.
I love it too. But look at the detail.
Yeah.
You know, and even in here.
Because that looks like you. A lot of bobbleheads, they just kind of look vaguely like not even a human sometimes.
I know, it's amazing.
That one looks like you.
Check this out.
What is this?
Hand-painted card. Exactly like my card.
Wow, that looks amazing. I have some of your cards. That looks exactly like.
Can you see who the fighter is?
Let's see here. Turn it upside down. No. I know they're 19 and 10 or something. What is that? Who is it? Hey, you know,
I forget.
I got this. Hold on. Bring it here. I'm going to zoom in on it. Hold it up. I got to get to the bottom of this. Things like this eat at me. I can't see it. Dang. I'm too shaky, Buff.
Where's Dave? Is Dave here?
I don't know. Hopefully he gives me that. I want that, Buff.
Anyway, it's very cool. We'll find out. But
put in a good word for me.
All right, you got it, TJ.
Thanks, Buff. All right. Enjoy the rest of your International Fight Week. We'll see you tomorrow from the Octagon.
Yeah, tomorrow from the Octagon. I'll be there ready to rock and roll, you know. Name of the game.
You're always rocking and rolling, Buff. Appreciate the time.
If I don't see Dave Manley, you may be getting this.
Do me a favor. Give him the out here. Tell him to be a role model to their sphere of influence.
Yeah. Oh, yes, that's right. Okay, here we go. All right, everybody. Big cheers and no fears forever. It's so exciting to be here at the UFC Fan Expo. So excited to be with my longtime partner and producer, TJ DeSantis. Everybody I see around here, the legends, you name it. Bottom line is, the UFC delivers, but you're the greatest fans in the world. So make sure when you set your goals and write them down, you step on that yellow brick road to your future to be the best you can be. Have all your knowledge together, be a role model to your sphere of influence, because if you are the best you can be, whether you're first, second, third, champion, or 10th, then you're winning. That's what the name of the game is, everybody. Be proud of yourself, have confidence in yourself, go out there and achieve everything you want to achieve. See you from the Octagon, and you know I'll be there.
Thanks, Buff.